This computer. Right? Good evening and welcome to the second of the spring 2021 BFA capstone readings. Tonight we have two performances by writers reading fiction pieces. At first glance, these two writers would seem to land on opposite ends of the fiction spectrum. Holley Ziemba, our first reader, delves into the psychological. Her characters live almost entirely in their minds, seeking out the safe corners, fleeing from the phantoms that populate the bulk of inner territory. At times, there seems to be no body, but when there is, it is so loud, so overwhelming that it cannot be sustained. The mind then drops the curtain, and we're safe, or so we make believe, because in a place of constant flux, how can anything promise to mean what it says? And then we have Kasey Shea, for whom, in tonight's story, the body dominates the show of life. The mind caters to the ancient reptilian need to be tested against its own mortality, against reason. The mind squeaks out an objection, only to be muffled immediately by the blood's need for blood. And yet, Holley's Abigail and Kasey's Outlaw both end in stasis, their crises met, overcome, sort of, both broken but weirdly satisfied, and perhaps not so weirdly alone at the end, as we know we must be. Although one of these characters, and this is why we have saved that one for last, is at least laughing. Please welcome these terrific and important writers. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Holley. Tonight I will be reading a piece from my thesis called How Am I Supposed to Feel? I hope you enjoy. How am I supposed to feel? The flashing neon open sign hanging in the window is new. A bright contrast to the dark nighttime sky. It blinks at me. I blink back. The last time I had been to this diner, the open sign was still paper, the kind attached with strings so they could flip it around when they closed. I wonder when they changed it. The bell that rings above my head as I push through the door is new too. The door being closed is new. The air conditioning that blasts through me when I enter the diner is new. I wonder if there's something that's still the same. A waitress greets me as I walk in, passing by in the flurry of a tacky diner uniform. Her skirt poofs out around her so much that it brushes my arm. The feeling sends a shiver down my spine. Goosebumps erupt across my skin, and I feel like an exposed wound. I don't belong in this place anymore. This place that was warm and inviting is now cold and closed off. I wonder if it's just me that feels this way. I head for the farthest booth by the front window, in the corner of the diner, my head down and my blonde hair falling around my face like a curtain, cascading like a waterfall that is hiding a cave. I feel like a cave. I am empty, hollow, without so much as an echo to fill me. Even my thoughts are quiet now. The floor shines brightly under my feet as I walk. My shoes, an off-white color, heels clicking lightly, look too dirty against something so bright. The floor never used to look clean, to look bright. Maybe I should leave, remove my unfitting self from this place before I let it drown me in familiar memories in an unfamiliar place. 4 years is a long time to be gone. I'm sure this place, this diner, and this town has already forgotten about me, and I'm sure this place won't miss me if I leave again. The familiar booth is covered with new fabric. No longer is there the loud, squeaking leather that farted every time we shifted in the seat, worn down in age with 2 giant rips across the backrest. It was replaced with an elastic fabric that hugs your shoulders when you lean back. The leather was always cold to sit on, even during summer, but the fabric that adorns the booth now seems to wrap around me, squeezing me into myself. I wonder if the fabric is trying to comfort me. Since I've been gone, who else has claimed this booth, our booth, as their own? Can I still call it our booth when one of us is gone, is dead? Her, she is the one who died. When one of us left, me, I am the one who left. I ran off to a university 3 hours away by plane because I couldn't stand the weight on my shoulders. I couldn't stand the fear of being stuck in a town that offered me nothing. I never looked back, and I never wanted to. The waitress from before flutters her way to me, her skirt bouncing with each step she takes. Her left tennis shoe squeaks against the shiny floor. My eyes watch her feet, her shoes the same shade as white as the floor. She fits in here. Someone who is able to find warmth in what I see as cold. As she comes closer, the routine squeak of her left shoe bounces around in my head. It is all I can think about. It is all I will let myself think about. Abigail, she says, voice soft and slow as if she didn't want to hurt me with sharp words. My eyes flutter up to meet hers. She continues. Abigail Drew. I wonder if she knows that the color of her eyes resemble a blue ocean tainted with dark green moss. How, I ask, my voice hoarse. The words have to be forced out of me, pushing against my vocal cords until they give, like pushing against a cracked window until it shatters. How do you know my name? The waitress smiles, small and sad. She looks away from me and out the window. The nighttime makes it too dark to see anything but herself in the reflection of the glass. What does she see when she looks at herself? Olivia, the waitress starts, voice barely more than a whisper. Don't. I cut her off. Don't say her name. The waitress turns her head to glance at me again, eyes scanning my face. When I make no further comment, staring at her with unwavering eyes, she continues. She said you would probably come here after the service. Since the funeral ended earlier today, I've been asking anyone who sat down here if they were you. I don't know how to respond, my eyes glued to hers. Why would she be looking for me? She shakes her head, sighing. Her eyes flutter closed and she stands there for a moment with no movement. She breathes in deeply and I find myself drifting into my thoughts, my eyes unfocused, and if I try hard enough, I can see the diner for what it used to be. Warm all the time, too warm during summer, worn out booths, barely working jukebox in the corner, cracked counters and flickering lights that died when it rained. Her, my best friend, sat across from me in our booth that wasn't our booth anymore. I'll be right back, the waitress says, turning on her heel and disappearing behind the counter to the kitchen area. I watch her go, but I ignore the squeak of her left shoe as she walks. It's no longer distracting, just annoying. The modernized jukebox, which looks to be a touchscreen box sitting on a sturdy podium pushed into the corner by the bathroom entrances, changes songs. The two girls leaning over the box let out a squeal of delight, hands grabbing for each other without looking as they step back to dance. They laugh, bright and happy. The scene is too familiar for me, memories flashing behind my eyelids every time that I blink. The sight of her laughing, bright and happy in front of the old jukebox fades into the forefront of my mind. I wonder which girl will be the one to die in their story. I look away from them, turning to look at my own reflection in the window, but I cannot see my blonde hair, my small nose, or the freckle just under the corner of my left eye. Instead, I see the reflection of her, brown, wavy hair, crooked nose, and big chocolate eyes that droop at the edges with tiredness. Why can I still see her so clearly? I startle when the waitress sets down a large glass on my table, a spoon and a straw set down right next to it, a vanilla milkshake. She once said this was your favorite thing to order when you came here, the waitress says with a smile, catching the question in my eyes when I don't reply. The first thing she told me when she started working here was about you. She talked about the way you ordered a vanilla milkshake no matter the day, no matter the season. She used to make herself one every time her break rolled around. Sitting down here, she motions to this empty seat across the table from my own and watch the world move outside. I'm already shaking my head. It wasn't my favorite, I mumble, reaching out for the straw. I rip the paper covering off on one end and use the straw to blow the rest of it to the empty seat across from me. If she were here, she would have caught it mid-air. Now it falls under the table. It was hers. But the waitress shakes her head too. No, she says. She never drank the milkshake when she had it, too sweet for her. She would tell me that at the end of her break and then dump the melted remains of the shake down the sink. I dip the straw into the milkshake, finding no words to say in response. How do I tell the waitress that the milkshake is too sweet for me too without her? Her, my best friend with a love for all things sugary sweet and a knack for stealing sips from my milkshake even when she had her own. Her who smiled while she was drinking and would spill milkshake out of the corners of her mouth. Her who I would order another milkshake for just to see her smile again. Her, Olivia, who's dead. She also left you this, the waitress continues, sliding a small envelope along the top of the table until it rests beside my milkshake. Did she plan it for a while, I ask, eyes not wavering as I stare at the flat envelope. My name is written on the front of it in her curvy handwriting. The eyes are dotted with hearts that are crossed out. I think so, the waitress sighs. And you didn't stop her, I ask, voice a little too harsh. It's not the waitress's fault. I know this. But I guess I want someone to blame other than myself. I couldn't, the waitress says. Her voice is fragile, like a glass sitting on the edge of a table, ready to fall and shatter on the floor. She gave me this envelope about 2 weeks ago. Almost 3 now, gave it to me with a smile and said a friend would be visiting soon, said that she wouldn't be here to give it to them, to you. So she asked me to give it to you, but I didn't know why she wasn't going to be able to give it to you until it happened. No one knew this was going to happen. No one knew she would, kill herself so suddenly like that. No one could have stopped her. I nod. I have to stop myself from saying I could. My shoulders slump forward and my head falls onto the table, thumping hollowly against the hard plastic. My body suddenly feels too warm. If I had talked to her at all in these 4 years since we went our separate ways to university, if I had told her more often that she was loved before I left, if I had still been the home she needed, wanted, craved, deserved, would I have been able to stop her? I don't know. I hear the familiar squeak of the waitress's left shoe as she walks away. I count her steps. I get to 10 before they fade, drowned out by the other noises of the diner. The girls are laughing by the jukebox. Plates clank together from the kitchen. The bell above the door dings as someone else comes in. I never wanted to return, never wanted to find myself sitting in the same spot I spent a good chunk of my life in, too afraid of being stuck in one place, one town that rendered me insignificant. Confined to my own faults and my own dormancy, even with the good memories, my best friend's smile, her laughter at the lame joke I had told, her brown eyes shining with happiness I couldn't understand unless it came from her. I feel like I'm cemented in the seat, drowning in past memories that I can't quite see because everything has changed. Because, like everything else in the diner, I have changed. I have grown out of what used to be familiar. Did she change too? Did she still touch the tips of her pointer finger and thumb together when she got anxious? Did she still tuck her brown wavy hair behind her ears when she was listening? Did she still laugh at the simplest of things? Did she still think of me? I should have told her that I still thought of her. I don't pick my head up from the table to look at the envelope, but I know it's there. It feels like it's screaming at me, shouting my name in an echo of her voice, and it's driving me insane. The emptiness that sits inside of me, the black cave of emotions that hasn't been filled since I got the call about her funeral last week, swells in me. It swallows me whole, spreading throughout my limbs with tingles, and I feel like I'm drowning. My own heartbeat, a steady rhythm that fades when I think too much, pulses in my temple as I press my head harder into the table. It feels like the world is trying to suffocate me. I close my eyes and pretend that nothing has changed. I pretend that I am 17 and sitting in the same old ratty booth with ripped leather and too much air under the fabric and coldness that never goes away. I pretend that she is sitting across from me, her laughter washing over me in waves of warmth. I almost hear her laughter when the song on the jukebox changes again. I sit up, staring blankly at the table as I try to pull myself from my thoughts, and I attempt to drag myself out of the memories that collect around me, feeling as if I am stuck in a ball pit with no sense of which way is up and which way is down. From the corner of my eye, I can make out the blurry shape of the envelope. I don't want to open it. I don't want to read it, but I don't know what she wanted to tell me, what she wanted to make sure I knew even after she killed herself. My hand moves to pick up the envelope, the fragile paper weighing nothing in my grasp. For a moment, I want to crumple it and drop it into my milkshake, because then they'll both be ruined, and I will have nothing tying me to the past anymore. But I can't. Even if I wanted to, I know I will never forget her. Would never just leave her in the past like so many other things from this town, from this part of my life. I pull the seal flap out from where it's tucked into the envelope, smiling to myself as I realize this hasn't changed about her. She would always just tuck the flap into the envelope, hating the idea of having to lick the seal. If it needed to be sealed, she would bring it to me with a sweet smile and bright eyes that I could never say no to. The letter inside is folded smaller than the actual envelope. The folded lines on the paper look thin, as if she had folded open and then folded the paper again numerous times. I wonder if she wanted to change what she wrote. Or maybe she thought my own response would appear on the paper one day, telling her whatever it is she wanted to hear. I scan the page without reading the words, taking in the curvy letters without attaching their real meaning to them. They remind me of waves from the ocean. They remind me of our beach trip 5 years ago when she wrote our names largely in the sand and let them get washed away by the cold ocean's waves. They extend across lines on the paper and then retract, pulling the words and letters tighter together until they all blend as one. I let myself get pulled with them, let myself drown in the waves of her now cold ocean, waves of warmth long gone with the sound of her laughter with her. My eyes settle on my name written at the top of the letter. Hey, Abigail. It says. My mind conjures up the echo of her voice, and I'm hearing her call to me once again from her front door. Abigail, hurry up or I'll eat all the popcorn. Abigail. She would say my name over and over again until I thought it lost meaning, but then she would say it one more time and give it more meaning than it had before. She defined my meaning by just saying my name. I read it again. Hey, Abigail. I hear nothing this time. I know it's been a few years now, and we haven't exactly talked since we both left for college, but go along with my jokes one last time, will ya? I nod, even though she's not actually here to see my reaction. I nod because I know I will always go along with her. Knock, knock. Who's there? I mumble aloud, the words tumbling from my lips like they used to. I feel like her favorite record, played on repeat until the words sound funny from overuse. My voice shakes, my words overused. It's me. Me who? It's me, Olivia. Olivia. Olivia, Olivia, Olivia. I cannot give meaning to your name like you can mine, Olivia. I'm sorry. Just coming by to tell you that I have to go now. Please don't. But I didn't want to leave without saying goodbye. You haven't said goodbye, I say, taking in a slow breath. My hands shake and the words on the page blur around the edges. And I wanted to tell you that I love you, even if we haven't talked for years, and I miss you, okay? Okay, Olivia. Okay. She signs the bottom of the letter with her name and a heart, the heart bigger than the actual letters of her name, bigger than how she saw herself, I'm sure. And I wish I could hate that. I wish I could be angry at her for giving out too much of her heart when she needed all of the love she could get. But I don't have the right to get angry anymore. Not when I took away the love I gave to her. This heart, her heart, is the last thing she wanted me to have, I realize. I fold the letter, gently sliding the paper back into the envelope and pushing the flap inside so it looks like I hadn't opened it. I slide it back across the table to rest beside my vanilla milkshake. The song on the jukebox fades back into my thoughts and I can hear the sounds of the diner again, as if nothing had happened. My gaze flutters back over to the window, hoping that my reflection is still her, still the person I remember her to be. It is. Olivia's big chocolate eyes bore into mine. I watch as her eyes well with tears, her unemotional facade crumbling and her sadness showing through the cracks. Her sadness was probably always a weed that grew in the cracks of her life, filling in the gaps left broken and breaking more. A tear falls down her face. I want to reach my hand out and wipe it away, wipe her sadness away, but I can't. So I don't move. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kasey Shea. Thank you for tuning into my virtual prout reading. I hope you can excuse the unconventional environment. It holds a little bit of sentiment and connection to the story because the story is a mixed martial arts story, and I have had exactly one mixed martial arts fight, and the night before I slept in this car. Want to know? Woo. Okay, general thank yous to everybody who had a hand in this thesis. The list is way too long to try to even read off here, and everybody who held my hand, not only through the process of writing, but also through life in general these past 4 years. I would have made mistake after mistake after mistake and continued to make the same ones without the guidance and watchful eye of so many. All right. This will be read from my thesis titled The Black Left Hand. The story is called One More. I was taking homecoming pictures of my daughter, Delaney, when I got the call. Some kid asked her to the dance last week, and now I was standing in my family room watching my little girl put her arm around a boy for the first real time in her life. She had her mother's auburn hair and my blue eyes. Hopefully those eyes never get swollen shut. Doubtful, considering she was already a little firecracker in the ring. She loved to kickbox. The boy, Eli, had been kind enough to ask his parents to drive them to the dance, as long as my wife and I did pick up. We all stood in the living room together, making casual small talk. Danielle was so much better at it than I was. I just pray they didn't ask what I did for a living. That conversation is always a bear to have with these lacrosse families. My 4-year-old son Mickey was playing with his toy cars on the kitchen table. He was a lot like me. Liked to be left alone to his own devices most of the time. My phone vibrated in my pocket, and I found myself both annoyed that someone was calling when I was with my family on a Friday, as well as relieved to get out of fielding more questions about mayoral candidates. My attitude changed when I saw the name, Joe White, president of the UFC. I quickly took my leave and went into the garage, brushing past my wife in the process. I felt her eyes on me. She knew who the call was. "Hello," I answered, trying not to sound too loud. My voice echoed through my garage gym. "Outlaw, it's me, Joe. How you doing tonight?" A mixture of confusion, hope, and sudden exhaustion made the phone feel like a brick in my hand. "Good, sir. About to send my daughter to homecoming for her first dance with a boy." "Ah, Christ, she brought a date home to meet the outlaw." "Nah, he's a nice kid. A little douchey and wore too much cologne, but he seems fine." "Is that what you called about? My daughter's Friday night plans?" "Actually, there's an issue with the next middleweight card," Joe said with a weird, angry chuckle. "Which is what has me calling you right now. Nate Orlando decided he doesn't want to miss the birth of his son. There it is. That means I'm out of a champion for my co-main event, and in need of an interim title holder. You're a fan favorite, you've put together a nice little run, and I want to know if you have one more big fight left." "I have more than one more, Joe." Less bite in my voice than in my thoughts. "Hey man, if you beat Eddie Bell's ass, you'll get one more. Listen man, I appreciate you taking the fight. I'll let you do what you need to do. This is going to be a big one. Have a good night, Jamie." Before I could respond, he hung up the phone. That's how Joe was. Spoke first and spoke quickly. It was all business 24/7. Eddie Hell's Bell was a young buck that was tearing up the division. He was fighting's next big hype train, former Golden Gloves winner, undefeated amateur, and professional record before his UFC signing. He was a knockout artist with a takedown defense that was unmatched and knees that could cut diamonds. 26 years old, 11 wins, no losses, hasn't lost a single round in the UFC. Hasn't even been knocked down. I started mapping out my training plan in my head, thoughts racing like a horse charging through the derby. As I pulled out my phone to call my head coach, I heard the door open. Standing in the threshold was my wife. Behind those pretty green eyes, one of the sharpest minds I'd ever met. Danielle was sharp as a tack, and she wouldn't let me get away with anything. "Delaney and Eli left," she said. "Not saying bye?" "They're on a schedule, Jamie." She walked forward slowly, arms crossed in the big steps. Her would-be stomp silent as her socks hit the cold concrete. "But I know your mind isn't on your daughter's dance anymore, so why don't you tell me what he wants?" "He's got a fight for me, 3 weeks out." As the words left my mouth, she hung her head with a small, sad smile. "I don't think you should do it." She was blunt, too. I suppose this had to be coming. I was 37, going on 100, and had more nagging injuries than an ASPCA dog, but that didn't make it any less hurtful. "What?" "I don't think you should do it." "Babe, it's a title shot." "So?" "Danny, don't start." "Start what?" "This shit." She gestured to all of me. I couldn't help but laugh a little bit. "You are pushing 40 years old. You have fought well past the number of times anyone should ever fight. You have cultivated this entire life for us through fighting, and I am so grateful and I love you for it. But you have a duty to be here. I'm here all the time. The gym is right down the road." There's this shit again. "What?" "You know what I mean, Jamie." Her voice was beginning to raise. "Your daughter's going on her first date tonight to her first dance, and you were out here talking to White about a title shot. If we were 25 and the kids were younger, I'd say go for it. But watching you get hit like that isn't just taking its toll on me anymore. Those losses were some of the worst things I've ever had to watch, Jamie. I haven't lost in over a year. I've strung together a great run. I've earned this title shot, and I am so proud of you for it, but I just think this fight is pointless." "Pointless? You think I'll lose?" "Jamie, no. I think that regardless of the outcome, you're going to get the short end of the stick. I don't think winning a championship is the short end of the stick. Fine, take the fight. I know I can't stop you, and you know we'll be there to support and love you, win or lose or draw, but a time is coming where you have to figure out who you want your kids to remember, the fighter or their father. I've met both, and one is a whole lot nicer to be around. 2.5 weeks from the fight, Seth and I sat in the middle of the mat, both of us covered in sweat, spit, and a little bit of my nose blood. We had just finished a solid day of training with a few good rounds of grappling groundwork. Seth was my head coach, best man at my wedding, and my oldest friend. He'd been through almost all of it with me. We met in college. I had been kicked off the baseball team for getting to a fight, which wasn't strange, and he was trying to make it as a fighter on the local amateur scene. He saw me hitting the heavy bag in the rec center basement with all the finesse and skill of a toddler and offered me some pointers. And there we were damn near inseparable. He brought me to his local gym, took me under his wing, introduced me to everyone I needed to know, and showed me the world of mixed martial arts. We watched the fights on the weekends at the bars, and even got me to work up the courage to talk to the bartender that would later become my wife. You'll fight in a rusty cage for $100 in a strip club parking lot, but you won't talk to her because she's pretty, he'd say to me. When he explained fighting, it became more than a sport or an outlet. It became a cathartic experience. It was training to throw yourself into a two-piece game of chess, looking another trained killer in the eyes, taking everything he had to throw at you, and going right back at him. It was a middle finger to a world that didn't understand exactly what a fighter was and what fighting could be for someone experiencing their own serving of bullshit. Out of all the combinations, chokes, and submissions, Seth's most valuable lesson was that fighting was whatever you needed it to be whenever you needed it. "You look good today," Seth half yelled as he rose from the mat, walking over to the gym speaker system to turn the volume down. "Born in the USA" was pumping through the speakers, softened, and he turned back to me. "Conditioning is there. You've always stayed in good shape between fights. You have that triangle choke, obviously, but getting someone like Bell on the ground is going to be a separate fight altogether." I nodded in agreement. I looked around the room while I stretched. The gym was called Dusty MMA, named after Seth's old Bichon Frise that would trot alongside him while he taught classes. And now three-legged dog sat lazily in the corner, watching while he chewed his stuffed monkey. The gym was Seth's baby. He had wanted to be in the fight game since he was 10 years old, and if he couldn't have an illustrious MMA career, this is the best thing. Gym owner, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, kickboxing champion, BJJ Pan Am champion, the man has still done it all. Coached several professional fighters, but I was the first. A few pictures of me were even hung up around the gym, pictures of Seth and I, and the rest of the team after my UFC debut, after some big wins, Seth's Pan Am BJJ medaling. It's crazy how far we've come. My head was so far back in the past I didn't notice Seth staring at me as he stretched in a deep squat on the other side of the mat. "You really think Nate Orlando just wants to see his kid born?" The question brought me back to the present. It was a weird question, but Seth is a weird guy. "I don't know," I said as I rose and bowed off the mat. "Birth your child is a big deal, but he's always been kind of a pussy. You think he's ducking Bell?" Seth nodded, but instead of his shit-eating grin I'm used to, I saw a different look in his eyes. I've seen it once before, when he told me he had to tell his father to stop hunting as his Alzheimer's got worse. "What's wrong?" Seth looked back at me, not daring to lie to me or even look away. I wasn't who he was. "Why are you taking this fight, Jamie?" I don't think he's called me Jamie in 10 years. "What do you mean?" I knew what he meant, and a pit fell in my stomach and my hands felt heavy again. "Why'd you say yes? Wouldn't you?" "This isn't about me, it's about you. And who you're trying to convince." "Convince who of what? You tell me. What the fuck is this, Seth?" I breathed out a laugh, then it dawned on me. "You've been talking to Danielle." "Guilty. God damn it. Oh, boo-hoo. Your wife loves you. Go fuck yourself." "She want me to back out." "Of course she does. She loves you. And ESPN has played the past couple days of Eddie Bell's highlight reel nonstop." "I don't know, man. I just don't need that negativity right now. Give me a break. You put it on yourself." "What?" I almost choked on my water. "I most certainly do not." "Oh, please. You spend a whole day reading whatever these bastards write about you if I'd let you. You dig for that negativity ever since you got hurt last time." I was getting mad, but I'd be lying if I said it hadn't worked its way into my mind. I was a third-ranked middleweight fighter in the UFC a few years back, and I was fighting the number 2 guy, a Nigerian named Jean St. Louis. He caught me with a right hand that busted open my eyebrow early in the 3rd round. Couldn't see out of my left eye, and he took full advantage, knocking me out with a sharp combo with 40 seconds left in the fight. Next 2 fights were shit. I lost to the number 7 and the number 9 ranked middleweights by unanimous judges' decision and fell straight down the ladder. On the way down, I seemed to hit every rung. Broken wrist, torn meniscus on my left side, partially fractured tibia on my right. Every article and story about my last 3 fights ended with some cute little tag about how the outlaw had finally been caught and should ride off into the sunset or some shit. The word gatekeeper got thrown around a lot, and one reporter even called me a journeyman that was late to the starting line. I broke my computer when I read that. Maybe he's right. I care too much about what people think. Look, man, I have a chance to cement myself in the eyes of everyone, and if I'm honest, yes, maybe I do care too much what they say, because I hate that there's even a question. That there's a debate as to whether or not I rank amongst the best ever. I have nothing left to prove to myself. I know the fighter that I am. This is a title shot for the legacy. I turned around as he cut me off. Your legacy's with your kids. I know that. I rolled around and threw my hands up before dragging them through my hair, coarse and curly with drying sweat. But all that's out there of me is articles about how I'm so close and so far, how I'm the unluckiest fighter of all time, how I just can't hack it on the big stage or in the big fights, and how it's time to walk away. I have 2 kids that deserve better than almost champion out of their father. And I'm on the cusp, Seth. Once again, I'm so fucking close. And that's true. You've worked harder than anyone I've ever seen, Jamie. But this sport takes things from people. It takes years and quality off your life. Matt Hughes, Gary Goodridge, Chris Benoit, fuck you. I'm not taking chair shots to the head. You might as well be against Eddie Bell. He wasn't wrong. Eddie Bell was a different animal. This guy has ended 2 careers already. You need to understand that as your friend, I don't want you to fight him. Hell, I don't think you should fight anymore, period. I used to say the hardest thing to do was to learn how to fight another human being, but now I realize that's wrong. It's telling someone when it's time to stop. And as my trainer, what does Seth Holmes, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and head coach of Outlaw Owens, have to say? Say if you're gonna fight him, you better fucking fight him. The rest of the world will accept the bout because they have no choice. The only one that has a choice left to fight anymore is you. So if you're going to do this, the worrying about your legacy and your home life ends now. Pick it up later. You have enough to worry about for 25 cage minutes in 2 weeks. I always hated these press conferences. They always happen a week before the fight. In concept, they're a great idea. Fighters getting so close yet so far away from their opponents, all the trash talk flying, the stakes raising. Careers can shift and icons can be made on the stage of these things. For me though, I've always hated the reporters. Bunch of bottom feeders looking to take something out of context to embellish their lack of journalistic prowess. Can't write a story or they'll make one up, or God forbid try to tell me a joke up there. I'll talk to the YouTube guys, but the big publications like Sports Illustrated and ESPN make me sick. No respect for fighting, no respect for the fighters. They're the reason people still look at the sport with shame and a stuck-up nose. I was sat on the left side of the podium. Joe stood up there. He was calling on reporters to ask their questions, and Eddie and I would answer to try to sell the fight a little more. Eddie was on the other side of Joe, confident as ever. He looked like a lion. Chin held high, nice blue suit. He's a good-looking kid. Nicely braided dreads, clean-cut facial hair, good posture, well-spoken, great smile. Damn, he had a confident air to him, and rightfully so. Man could do whatever he wanted in front of the camera. Eddie, what was your initial reaction to being told Nate Orlando was pulling out of the fight? A short, stout man with white hair and a gray goatee asked. Honestly, I think he's ducking me. Straight to it. Kind of like this kid. He wanted to push the fight further back in the year when they tried to schedule it in March, so it was moved to October. And now that the fight is here, he decides to be a stand-up husband? I think he's scared of me. Camera shutters clicked and phone screens were tapped with notes as Joe chose another reporter, this time a skinny kid dressed like every open mic comedian you've ever seen. Jeans, sloppy hoodie, ugly glasses, had a snarky little face to him. Eddie, what was the initial reaction when Outlaw was chosen as your opponent? Eddie's eyes shifted my way for a split second as he pulled up the microphone. I thought it was nice to get someone I know isn't scared of me. Somehow I know he'll bring everything they have. Outlaw is a legend of this game, and I have all the respect in the world for him, but I'm willing to win titles here. This is a roadblock, just another little puddle to step through to get to the top of the division. I'm glad to see Outlaw's got one more big fight left in him. There's that one more bullshit again. Outlaw, your response? I licked my lips and picked up the microphone. Frankly, I'm getting sick of hearing this one more shit. A few chuckles and whoops came from the crowd. A small smile I wore on my face quickly soured as I turned around. Checked over my shoulder for the reaction of Joe before continuing. I'm 38 years old. I have 2 kids, but motherfucker, I am still sharp as a tack. I knocked out Derek Brunson. I made Darren Till tap. I dominated Jared Cannonier. I earned the right to get that phone call. I might be a roadblock in your eyes right now, but Eddie, I've been through this dance before, and I promise you, if you don't take me seriously, I'll be a real problem. A problem for me? Eddie asked with a smirk. Old man, you're not going to be my problem unless you're talking about my conscience. I didn't want to be the one to turn you into a stay-at-home dad. But you've earned your spot on this card. A big name that'll add some cash value and boost my stock. You're sick of hearing one more, well, that's too bad. You're an old buck. Kind of young wolves like me salivate over. There's some oohs and ahs from the crowd in response to that one. He's an entertaining kid and out of the cage, and I respect his game, but I am nobody's stat fluffer. They wanted to bring out that brash asshole in me for this card, and I'm game. Listen, kid, I've been fighting since before you had your learner's permit. I've been knocked out, tapped out, beaten, broken, bruised, and battered, and I've had more concussions than I'd ever admit. My knees are no longer my own. My hips click when I go down the stairs. And I'll probably be deaf before the next decade, but I have never turned a fight away, and I'm not going to start just because you've hammered your way to the top. I've derailed more young careers than teenage pregnancy, and I promise you that you are no different. I didn't mean a word of that. I thought this kid was the future of the middleweight division, but I can't let him know that a week before the fight. Joe picked another reporter, one of the regulars from ESPN. Eddie, can we get a prediction? Hell's Bell by knockout, 90 seconds, Eddie said into the mic. His voice dripped with confidence, like that wolf he was talking about, drooling over an old elk. He definitely won that first round, and the second. He outclassed me in every respect. My nose was broken, my ribs were bruised if not cracked. He came out like a machine, keeping a consistency and pace that even my old ass had never seen before. My strategy had been always to overwhelm the opponent with constant strikes, even at half power, just to keep them rattled, then pick my spot as they tire out. I'm not the only one to do that. Colby Covington and Gilbert Burns do it at welterweight, but Eddie was beating me at my own game. Kept me on the outside both rounds and peppered me with the hardest punches I'd ever felt. Knocked me down twice, but I was able to tie him up when he tried to work the ground and pound. Jamie, Seth was in my face as I stood on the stool. I was taking small sips of water as the timer counted down from 1 minute. He's fucking you up. You're eating too many punches and you're taking too much damage. You won't survive 5 more minutes if you keep swallowing his right hand like that. What the hell are you doing? Move around, get in close, season his leg with kicks, then work your feints. I took in as much of that info as I could. He was right about the damage. I could feel those right crosses in my sinuses. I felt my heart beat in my ears. It thumped like the drum of an oncoming raid, priming me for a battle against thousands while I struggle in this war against one. As the third round started, he marched forward like a locomotive. I slipped his punches and stayed out of his clinch. I blasted his lead leg with kicks and even cut him open. I found a groove. I won the round and carried the momentum into the fourth. As the penultimate round began, I kept up the dance, fueled by the desire to never hear anyone ask, "Do you still have one more?" ever again. After a few more strikes, I had him backed up against the cage with 1.5 minutes left in the round, slipped a hook, landed a head kick straight from hell. I've never landed a head kick so clean in my entire career. It sounded like a thunderstorm breaking open. The arena felt a brief moment of awestruck silence before exploding back into a frenzy of shock and awe. I felt cool sweat from his temple dampen my shin as he stumbled backwards. I looked at his eyes, expecting to see the blank expression of an unconscious warrior, but instead I saw him blink and lock his gaze with mine. Fuck. It was in that moment that I realized I'm finished. This is my last fight. Danielle was right. It was time for me to embrace my responsibility as a father and a husband. My life is no longer about me anymore, but my kids. But I can still win this fight. Win one more time. One last time. He was down, but he wasn't out. I jumped on top of him, but he shifted his weight, and now I was on my back with my legs wrapped around his waist in a full close guard. He rained a few punches down, but I was able to catch one and pull him into a triangle choke. He was strained to stay conscious when the horn sounded. As we stood up, I looked right at him, and he stared right back. A silent respect for what we'd gone through together, but a violent promise that the worst was yet to come as we headed into that final round. "Hey, where's that wolf at?" I barked as blood dripped from my mouth. I couldn't read his expression. "Great work," Seth said as I trudged back to my corner. "You got his ass there. His leg is hurting. Attack that leg, get his ass down. You have the best triangle in the division. Use it, but don't rush in and watch those knees." I nodded and rose. My engine was turning. I loved being here. I could taste my blood. My cheek was cut. I think my meniscus was torn again, and there was a gash over my left eye, but I knew one thing. I looked beautiful right now. I was the outlaw that I always had been. I felt like I was 20 years old. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to be saying goodbye already, resting in my hotel room with my wife after getting destroyed on pay-per-view for the whole world to see. Taking my standing ovation and retirement in stride as the times changed, the sport evolved beyond my reach, and a new leaf turned over in the world of MMA. But I was in this fight. I was 2 rounds each, and we were headed into the 5th and final with a title on the line, and I had just dropped a guy who hadn't been knocked down in his fighting career. The community didn't want me here. They didn't want me to be proud of this as an old dog keeping up with these lions. They wanted a happy retirement after beating some shit-talking undercards, but that ain't what I am. I'd found this sport as an outlet when people blackballed me from being anything better than mild, sufficient, or mediocre. Seth found me, Danielle found me. I'd been called a gatekeeper, just shy of winning the big one, and up until this point, they'd probably been right to do so, but I was 5 solid minutes away from shedding that skin forever. This is all I have left. This is the last fight I'll ever be in. As the 5th started, we were both exhausted, but we couldn't let up. Each step sent a burst of electricity up my leg as I felt myself teeter in my stance. His eye was swelling up, as were mine. My nose was barely functioning, and my ears were ringing as we traded blows, increasingly blasting back and forth. If I won this round, I won a championship. My throat burned with a combination of pain and desire as I worked forward and bounced out of range of the powerful strikes. With 4 minutes to go, I started working on his leg when I saw a high kick screaming towards my head. At the last second, I threw my hand up to block, and I felt my forearm fracture. Fuck. Pain had always been a memory game to me. Every hit and blow I take, I find myself comparing it with the worst similar thing I can think of. This time, I can't think of anything more painful. My arm kept from hanging limp only by the tape on my wrist. My mind relapsed into survival mode. My body began to shake with pain as I backed up like a wounded animal. Nothing on the planet was more dangerous. I slipped more strikes and threw a hard right before shooting for another takedown as fast as I could. But he was faster. This time his knee caught me and my orbital bone busted as I stumbled backward. The forearm suddenly forgotten as I registered that this was truly the worst pain I'd ever felt in my entire life. The sheer act of seeing burnt my eye, and it felt like it was boiling in its own blood. I couldn't see out of my right side. I felt the impact of another strike, and I can promise you, those feel a lot different coming from the dark. I felt my knees buckle, and my body hit the canvas, and everything went black, and the sound got cut. I looked up at the lights as time seemed to slow down. I remember every loss I ever took, but none of them felt like this one. I felt like someone else, like these hands weren't my own anymore, and nothing I was going to do was going to fix that. It didn't stop the tears from welling up in my eyes. The referee, doctor, and Seth all checked up on me, but I tried to wave them off. I did the pleasantries with Eddie as he celebrated with his team, and I kissed my wife on the way to the locker room, feeling as broken as a man could. I was promptly escorted to the hospital as they assessed my injuries. They usually want a post-fight press conference, but half my body was in the shitter. Broken ulna, fractured orbital bone, lacerations on my cheek, eyebrow, and forehead. My lip was torn on the left side. My meniscus and MCL were all but disintegrated. I was exhausted, but utterly restless. Danielle and I sat in a comfortable silence as we waved off reporters, something she enjoyed even more than I did. "I'm done, Danny," I said with a sad sigh, followed by a little laugh to cover a faint sob. "Jamie," She started, but I cut her off by grabbing her hand. Her eyes welled with tears, and she gave me a gentle hug. We sat like that for a minute before the rumble in my stomach stirred us both. I'll go get some dinner. She kissed me on the forehead and patted my hands. As I watched her leave, I couldn't help be reminded of how lucky I was to have somebody as understanding. I heard my phone vibrate, a text from Seth. It was a screenshot of a tweet from ESPN. Eddie Bell had apparently missed the post-fight presser too. Jostling of the door handle rattled me from my thoughts, and I was surprised to see not Danielle, but Eddie. There's the wolf, I chuckled as he walked forward. His eye was swollen, almost completely shut, and there was bruising all over his face. He was in a hoodie and some sweats, and he looked at my phone to see what music I was playing. Springsteen, fuck your old man. The laughing hurt my bruised ribs, but I found it funny. My dad listens to him. Yeah, it's been my walkout since day one, I replied. I know. I've seen all your UFC fights more than once. Believe it or not, I'm a big fan. Well, I'm honored. It's a weird thing, being told how the guy who beat the shit out of you saw you as an inspiration. It was an honor to fight you. I have a lot left to learn. You had my ass beat in 3 and 4, and it was a hell of a fight. It really was. We sat in a few beats of silence, and he looked like he was watching someone die. So what's next for you? Straight to the point. Me? I already know what I have to do. Nate Orlando is gonna have his ticket punched, but what about you? That's all those reporters are talking about. They want to know what's next for the outlaw. I trusted Eddie, weirdly enough. I had only formally met him last week. But after you beat the tar out of each other, it's either brotherhood or bitterness. I think you were right. I think I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad. I looked at him with a soft smile, and we both started laughing. Thank you.